supernatural authority on the rebels via cardinal sin. Thousands of people formed a human barricade against the expected advance of Marcos's troops. Cardinal Sin appealed over Radio Veritas for people to send food and help guard the barricades. But still, so far so good for Marcos. The crowds at EDSA had no guns. But at a crucial moment, Marcos started making decisions when he was angry and crazed with hunger for staying in power. In Closer Than Brothers, Manhood of the Philippine Military Academy, by Alfred McCoy, there's a riveting section on the battle of wills and wits between Ferdinand Marcos and the rebels holed up in Camp Aguinaldo. One big problem was that Marcos was very ill. McCoy quotes one aide who witnessed Marcos creeping from room to room, brain befuddled by disease and medicines, his situation not helped by General Fabian Ver's seeming incapacity to undertake genuine generalship. He had troops around Malacanang, and when they were finally ordered to move, the traffic jam was so bad, the troops got stuck. It's not that what Marcos wanted was to be concerned with the well-being of his countrymen, but rather, he ended up delaying too long every time he made up his mind. Fabian Ver, for example, had wanted to massacre the people at EDSA and to do it as soon as possible. Marcos said no on TV. Now, to this day, even some of his critics give him credit for doing this, but what we forget is that he eventually ordered the people gathered at EDSA to be massacred, but by then, the momentum had shifted to the rebels. So every time the Marcos government was poised to seize the upper hand, the palace or the prime movers and shakers in the shaky government would issue contradictory orders or delay and delay and delay. Now, these delays proved crucial. Generals and other officers wavered, then changed sides. And with the military in chaos, the civilian authorities ended up paralyzed too. With Metro Manila on the streets, the provincial warlords didn't know what to do, and other cities in turn, Cebu, Davao, Cagayan de Oro, and Baguio, engaged in people power on their own. Marcos even then resorted to the tried and tested tactic of proclaiming a curfew. But people ignored it. And so, on February 25th, with only the Soviet ambassador in embarrassed attendance, President Marcos held his last hurrah in the palace. Now, he'd lost because his own body failed him, his subordinates, promoted not on merit but purely on loyalty, failed him, and fear and money had lost their power to enforce discipline and obedience. Cory Aquino declined to take her oath of office in a military camp and held her inaugural in Club Filipino instead. The Marcoses, advised to cut and cut cleanly by U.S. Senator Paul Laxalt, hurriedly packed their bags. And so on February 25th, it was, as the headlines proclaimed, all over. Marcos, his family, and close friends escaped Manila, hoping to set up a rival government up north. But instead of going to Paway, the Marcoses ended up in Hawaii, shadows of their former selves trying to operate a shadow government in exile. By February 26, a new government was in place, and the roller coaster would continue for several more years to come. And all the way to Marcos's death in Hawaii in 1989, the plots to turn back the clock and restore the dictatorship would continue. So when we return, we'll ask our guest to walk us through why guns, goons, and gold proved an unwinning combination in 1986. Welcome back to The Explainer. Now, joining me is the former executive director of editor of the Manila Times, which was revived just days before the snap election, Business World executive editor, Verel Santos. Verel, let me start by asking you, Marcos had figured out that there was a winning combination for elections, whether fair or not, and that this was basically to harp on his record, to have all the money, and so on and so forth. Is this, for example, still a valid way to pursue electoral success, or have we changed?
I think so, to a certain extent. You will see that no election since has been considered. No, every election has been disputed, and this by itself tells us how poorly we have developed since then. Much is made about us having moved significantly forward politically. I don't know, but I don't think we have actually gotten over our two basic cultures: the culture of warlordism and the culture of cronyism. And these are the operating cultures still in. This, to me, constitute the state of the nation.
Well, but this is a question that's been hotly debated since 1986. If this sort of crony warlord combination was the winning combination, and Marcos had proved it time and again, why did it fail him in 1986? And was that an aberration then? And is it actually still the winning combination for anyone who wants to be president?
It seems to me to have been affected by a tilt in the balance of power. You must understand that at the time, Marcos was losing American patronage, for one thing, and a good section of the Filipino people, a critical mass, has become progressively emboldened after 1978. To me, the most significant challenge mounted against the Marcos dictatorship was the revolution by noise in 1978.
The noise barrage for the Batasan.
Barrage. Then after that came the April 6 movement, which was certainly more serious than noise, and the Light of Fire movement, and so on. And after that, soon enough, another trigger event happened, the assassination of Ninoy. And so this was carried on by a conspiracy of both man-made and natural events. And so Marcos was, I think, defeated by that, and also because Marcos was no longer himself.
But then the implication of that is that anyone who, in a sense, is interested in following the Marcos blueprint, as long as you maintain your health and can think clearly, and as Marcos himself advised, make decisions cold-bloodedly,
yes,
that you cannot fail.
Yes, I think so long as you have the suitable constitution and predisposition, I think you can do it. I don't know how long you will be able to hold on to power, but you certainly can seize power by doing so, given those.
Conversely, if you put it another way, it was a showdown precisely between this crony warlord combination by their tried and tested methods of gaining and holding on to power, and then this very messy, very argumentative sort of ragtag coalition of well-meaning busybodies,
yes,
you know, as many of the critics of Marcos were called by Marcos himself.
Yes.
So then, was their victory an aberration and one that cannot be replicated, because you keep harping back to it in many ways?
Yeah, certainly, but that is not to say that you cannot learn if you happen to be someone with a Marcos disposition, that you could not learn your lessons from there. I mean, you certainly can reinforce your own potentials by learning the right lessons from Marcos.
In this particular election, we're seeing in many ways a last hurrah also of many veterans of that area. Senate President Juan Ponce Enriquez, and one of the oldest candidates. He's still very powerful. You have many people who are sort of mid-level or young